Are you a chiropractor with a struggling practice, having a hard time finding and keeping patients? Is your staff falling short of expectations? I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer, and DC Trainings has the answers that you need. So tune in now and find out how.
Hello, welcome to DC Trainings. I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer. Thank you for joining our webinar today. And we have kind of an exciting section to cover because we're actually going to cover two topics. I had missed a week, and so we're doubling up, but we have two exciting topics today. We have the CA delivers the report of findings and reviews subluxations. So we'll cover both of those, but let me jump right in and get off to a good start because we do have quite a bit of material to cover. So we're going to go into the report of findings module. So this is where you can always get your materials. They're always available for you. And we're going to scroll down. So we just covered the CA delivers the report of findings. We're now going to jump into review subluxations. Okay, that's these materials here. I do have a demonstration there for you, so you can check that out. And then there's also an introduction for that. But let's get into the PowerPoint part first. And then, there we go. And then we'll jump back to the other. And as always, if you have a question, raise your hand, type it in, whatever I can do to answer questions along the way. I want to make sure that you get everything that you need. And let's talk about reviewing the subluxations. So in this section, again, I want to just emphasize what I said before, where we're actually showing somebody what's going on under the surface, right? And that quote that I shared earlier it's from Sigmund Freud. It's one of the famous quotes from Sigmund Freud, where he said, people will do more to avoid pain than they will to gain pleasure. So by showing someone a condition like this, what we're doing is we're instilling value to the level where at the point when they're out of pain, right? Because when you're getting chiropractic care, you're going to feel better, your body's going to be healthier, everything's working better. At the point when they're out of pain, they can then value it enough to continue with their chiropractic care, right? So I'm going to play kind of the devil's advocate version of this for just a second, because let's supposing I was recommending for Celeste. Celeste, I want you to come in and receive chiropractic care for the next year. And of course, I'm paraphrasing, but Celeste says, was it going to take a year for me to feel better? I'm in a lot of pain. I need to feel better now. Well, no, you'll feel better much faster. So, because we're going to get off to a good start, but we still want to recommend that you come in for a full year. Well, if she doesn't have any education behind that to understand that, she's going to go, well, and here's her response. And I'm going to change this and give you two scenarios, which you'll all recognize. But the first is, well, I'll just come in until my pain stops, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, right? And that's a reasonable answer because she hasn't been educated about what the long-term benefits are. The other answer, the other response to that would be, and I know we've all heard this too, is a patient who says, I'll just come in until my insurance visits are maxed out, and then we'll see what happens, right? So they're basing their response on their insurance coverage, or they're basing it purely on pain relief. Now, which one of those two scenarios caters itself to long-term chiropractic care, right? That neither one does. So we want to presuppose that those questions are floating around in a patient's head so that we can start to plant education in place and help them to understand our rationale for the recommendations before they even ask the question, right? So that way we know that question's bouncing around in there. We know that it's based on a lack of education or a lack of information. And if we provide the right education and information, then the value will go up, and that question that's been bouncing around will be answered in a way to where when I say, Celeste, we want to recommend that you come in for a year, she goes, oh yeah, okay, well, obviously this isn't about pain relief. This is about the long-term benefits. And this isn't just about my insurance because the coverage is limited. I need to be responsible beyond what my insurance covers. Okay, now that I've mulled that over in my mind, yes, I want to come in and follow your recommendations. So we want to presuppose these types of questions are floating around and bring up information, because we know it's in there, that answers those concerns in a positive way. And then, of course, when we do get into recommendations, we've already flushed out all the challenges, and we'll get into that in care plan objections in a bit. But we already have answered those questions, haven't we? We've already sort of flushed those issues out so that they're not an issue anymore. And then we can move forward with our recommendations. Okay, so just wanted to share that with you. Let's go back to our screen here. So now we're going to talk about reviewing subluxations, which is week 4 of module 3. And this section here, again, which I love about this and the way we run our practices, especially for the doctors with DC trainings, is that we show our patients the condition. They can create ownership about it. They can be responsible about it. They can really integrate the solution to this condition into their lifestyle. So I love this section, and I want to go through some different scenarios. There's lots of different areas or ways that we can show our patients this condition. So I'm going to go through samples of each so that you can, pick which ones are the right fit for you. You might decide that you want to use an X-ray. You might not have X-ray. So we want to cover all these different areas. But again, as I'm showing you on the screen here, this is me showing a patient their condition, right? I'm giving them a visual explanation so they can create ownership around how to take care of this in the best possible way. And these educational tools allow a patient to visualize their own specific subluxations. I know I'm being redundant there, but that's obviously I want to read what the screen says for you, and let's get into the specifics. So we're going to continue along with our explanation. We're going and this is I'm going to put these items up on the screen because I want you to pause for a minute, right? We explained the subluxation from a general standpoint. Now we're going to pause and say, okay, before we get into the specifics of your subluxations, before I show you your condition, I want to just go back for a minute. Now, we're going to repeat the chief complaint. We're going to repeat the cause, the duration, and now we're going to combine with the primary concerns. Now, I want to expand my screen for a minute because this is really important, and I want you to really get this part. Now, what we're doing is we're bridging a gap, aren't we? Because the spouse is here with the patient, and they don't know what the patient shared with us at the last visit. So the patient may have come in and said, or even back up further, the patient may have left the house saying, hey, I've got this low back pain. I'm going to go to the chiropractor and get adjusted. Okay, great. And they left the house and off they went. Then they came in to see us and we realized, not we, they realized, wow, I've got a lot more going on. Maybe I had that lower back pain. Maybe I shared with the office that I've had allergies my whole life. They may have realized that there was a potential where they could shed some extra pounds and be healthier from a nutritional standpoint so that their body would be in a better position to heal itself. And so there was a nutritional component that came into the conversation. And so, but the spouse doesn't know that, right? The spouse is here with the patient thinking just about, hey, they left with low back pain. I was told to come with them to help them out with this condition. I left work. I need to get back to work. Tell me what I need to do, and I'm going to be out of here, right? So we have to take this carefully. So in the beginning, when we first started the report of findings, we justified the spouse's taking time off work or whatever they did to be there by saying, here's the condition that the patient came in with, the low back pain. And we actually found some more information that elevated our concerns because this lower back pain is connected to a condition that we take care of. And here's how it can become more advanced. So let's not let it do that. Oh, and by the way, while they were here, now we're talking to the spouse, this patient also shared with us that they've had X, Y, and Z affecting them. Well, it turns out that we can help with those issues too. So this is more of a comprehensive approach now to helping them rather than just a single approach to dealing with the low back pain, right? So at this point, we're sort of encompassing all those things in our process, but we don't want to start with that because we want to allow the spouse to gradually come to a better understanding of what it is that we're trying to do, how it is that we're going to be able to help this person, and then we can encompass that more into a general approach and incorporate those other findings. So you want to take this in a real step-by-step way, and that's what I'm showing you. So let me jump back over here, and there we go. Okay. So as I said, we're going to continue the report of findings. We're going to repeat the chief complaint. So John, when you first came in, you shared with us you had this lower back pain for 10 years from a surfing accident. You can see my surfboard on the wall behind me. So maybe I'm playing the part. Now, based on that, John, what you also shared with us was that you've had lifelong allergies and you've also had these other conditions that have been affecting you. Now, those can also be tied to a subluxation, and I'm going to show you why in just a minute, right? So now we've incorporated these other symptoms or these other health challenges into the equation where the spouse says, oh, wow, he just left to go get adjusted for low back pain. There's these other things, which, yeah, I know about those things because he's been talking about them for years. You can help with those too. Wow. Okay, I'm interested, right? So we combine with all the primary concerns at this point, and then we continue on. Okay, so here's some examples of the educational tools that you can use. You can use an X-ray, you can use a thermal scan, you can use a neuropathylator. I'm going to go through and show you some of these. So let's start with the X-ray. If you have X-ray, great. This is how you'll use it. You're going to start by showing a normal X-ray. So here's an example of a lateral cervical. So we put that up saying this is a normal cervical. Now, I'm going to just sidebar for a second because I want you to explain this in a simple way. I mean, if the patient asks questions requesting that you go down deep into the rabbit hole and you uncover all these details and anatomy and physiology, that's fine. But on the surface, let's keep it short and sweet and then allow them to ask questions and we can go further if needed. But here's what I would suggest. On an X-ray, pick 3 things, just 3 things, that's it. For example, in this X-ray, there's a normal curve, that's 1. The disc spaces are roughly equal in size, that's 2, so equal disc spacing. And number 3, the bones, at least on the front side, are relatively square. Okay, that's 3 things, real simple. Now that I've explained the normal, then I put up their X-ray. Now don't show their X-ray until after you've shown the normal, and that's going to carry through the next few examples I give you. We want to show normal first, and then we're going to show theirs, because the question comes up when you show theirs. If you've done your job right, all you have to say is what's different, and then you pause, and you pause long enough for them to answer, not you to answer, them to answer, because the next one that speaks is going to be the one that, as they say in sales, seals the deal, right? But in this case, I would put that up and just say, what do you see that's different? Now, it doesn't take an advanced, radiologist or doctor to notice that there's a significant difference about this X-ray than the first one, but it may not be what you think they're going to say. Like if it were me, the thing that jumps out at me is I would say, well, there's no curve there. But I've had times where I thought it was clearly obvious that there was no curve. And I asked the patient, what do you see that's different? And they said, C4 disc is smaller than the rest. Oh, well, then that's where we're going to start. We're not going to start with the curve because we're going to start where they noticed the problem, right? So, or they may say there's a spur on the front of C4. They may not even get to the curve yet. You're going to start with what they notice first, okay? Now they might notice something that like, okay, the atlas is tilted. And you go, okay, well, you don't want to discount their concern around that item. You could say, that's right. Yes, the atlas angle is not correct. Did you also notice this? Right, so that would be a nice way to be complimentary in terms of what they noticed first, and at the same time, then transition over to what you really want their attention to be centered around, which is another issue that's, in your opinion, of larger importance, right? So you can acknowledge what they say, and then if you need to shift it over, just say, now, did you notice this over here? And of course, when you say that, they'll say, oh yeah, now that you say that, I do notice that. And that's how, then you move forward from there. Okay, so that you're going to show the normal first, then you're going to show theirs, ask them, what do you see that's different? Now watch how this works as I go through these next examples. The next one is the thermal scan. If you use like a subluxation station or an EMG graph, then put up a normal one first. Once again, same way. Here's normal. The white bars are balanced on either side. That indicates that there's no inflammation. There's a gradient scale of white is normal, green is mild, blue is moderate, red is advanced, black is severe. And you don't have to memorize that, but those are the color gradients. So when we jump over to yours, what do you see that's different? See, once again, what do you see that's different? I explain normal, then I put theirs up. Don't put theirs up until after you've explained the normal one. Now, they might, there's a lot of things they could say based on what I just put up there. They could say, wow, there's a lot of red around my neck. Or they might say, there's a black bar at T10. Or they might say, well, nothing's going on in my lower back. See, and you can acknowledge that. Yeah, you're right. The bars aren't significant in your lower back, but did you notice how much red there is up around your neck? And here's why. And then you go into the explanation. So you explain normal, then you put theirs up and ask them, what did you see? You see the pattern? The next example, neuropatholator, which I recommend all of us should have a neuropatholator in our offices. It is a great educational tool. So for the neuropatholator, and I'm just going to show you a picture of that. What we can do is we can allow certain parts of the anatomy to light up based on a connection to a certain level of the spine. So on the right side, you see the buttons. I can recommend that you have the patient push their own button. So you would just indicate the number. You could say down here, we want you to push number 6 at the cervical. So push C6, let them push it. And then it's going to light up where those nerves go. And when that lights up, you'll see, as the phrase goes, the light bulbs go on. You're going to see their own light bulbs go on. They're going to go, oh, that's why. And what I love about this, especially, is when the spouse is there, because when the spouse is there, they're thinking, what does the neck pain have to do with asthma? I don't understand, but I'm following along. I'm here. Keep going. But when the neuropatholator lights up and they see the direct path from the spine to the affected organs, I can't say it any more perfectly. The light bulb goes on, right? It's an amazing tool. So definitely recommend that. It's given by a company these are sold by a company called, it's Bruce Goldsmith, and I can't think of the name of his company right now, but you can request that from us if you're interested in getting these. I know what they sell these days is a computer-based version of this, to where you're clicking with a mouse and it lights up. The one I have is an older style. It's actually on the wall. And you push the buttons on the wall. So either way, those are a great tool. Now, we're moving through a sequence of different tools that you can use. You might use all of them. You might use some of them. You might have all of them and choose to use only some of them based on the circumstances of your patient. So some patients want more education, and you can use all of them and show them, like, look here, this one shows your subluxations. This one shows it too. This one shows how advanced they are. Or you might just use one or two and then move on. So it kind of depends, and you can customize it based on what your patient needs. But the next one is the biomechanics. Now, this one I have at my office. I don't have it here with me today, but it's a 10-pound fishing weight. And I basically will put my wrist in a curve, and I'll rest my elbow on the table, and I'll set the weight in my hand. And I'll say, now, right now I'm relaxing my hand because the curve of my wrist is supporting the weight. And then I'll give it to the patient and say, put your elbow on the table. I'm going to set this on your hand. Don't drop it, but just relax your hand there. And they can rest their elbow on the table. I put a 10-pound weight in their hand and then explain, your head weighs about 10 pounds. Now, when I set this weight there, if there's a curve in your wrist, you can relax your hand and let the weight stay there all day if you needed to, right? But now we're going to reverse that curve in the shape of what your neck looks like. And now I want you to hold that 10-pound weight. Now, be careful that they don't drop it on your table and break your table or put a hole in your desk. But when they flex their hand forward, that represents a reverse curve in the neck. And from that standpoint, they're going to feel right away how much tension is in the neck and shoulders. And they're going to realize that's why I've been having so many issues there, right? Because they don't have a curve in their neck. And that tension on their neck and shoulders is not allowing the bones to support the weight of their head. It's all going into the muscles of their neck and shoulders. So that's important to share that example so that they can actually feel what it is that their body's going through. So that's another tool. Now, let's keep going, and we'll go to the next one, the exam findings. And there's a little instep on those bullets that's not supposed to be there. Those should all line up together. But the exam findings would be a situation where maybe you have a pregnant mom that comes in and you don't want to take x-rays and you don't have a thermal scan. That's okay. You can use your exam findings. So you could actually show restricted range of motion. You could show limited mobility. You could show painful range of motion, all as examples of the subluxation under the surface that is affecting that part of the nervous system. So you can use your exam findings. That's great. That's another great tool. And last but not least, we can show the subluxation degeneration, which I'm going to show you on a chart in just a minute. But before we leave this screen, I want you to take a close look at this screen. We have here, 5 valuable tools that you can use to educate your patients. You can pick one, any, or all of them to really do a good job of educating about the subluxations. They all should go in sequence, but the last one, the subluxation degeneration, is the one that you're going to save for last. Okay, so the last one I'm showing you is intentionally last based on whatever you chose in the previous sections to show them. Okay, so this one comes last, and I'll show you why right here. This is the poster, and you can get this through Parker sells it, or Share. I think it's called share.com or Share Products. But you can get this on the web. You can order these. But this is a great poster, and there's other ones out there, which is fine. But what I like about this one is it shows the range from, and I'm going to get my mouse on here in a second. Here we go. So you can see my mouse. It shows the range from normal all the way to fusion. And what I want you to do is I want you to describe this to the patient in a way where they're going to pick their level of degeneration. And I'll show you this in a minute on the big screen, but let me just point out first how I would explain this. Okay, so last, this is a chart that shows the phases of degeneration as it relates to a subluxation that continues without correction. If you just let it run its course, this is what it does. So in the first part, we have these normal alignments, normal disc spaces, nice square bones. The next one, there's a misalignment. That's called phase 1. In the next one, there's some decay. That's right here, and that's called a phase 2. The last one, there's lots of decay. That's a phase 3 where the bones are beginning to fuse, and phase 4 is total fusion. Now, this is an older poster, and so I know some of you use this, but this is a question I get all the time. What does the 0 to 20 years and 6 months to 1.5 years mean? Well, because this poster came out years ago, historically, it would take 0 to 20 years to get to a phase 1, or 20 to 40 years to get to a phase 2. And it would take 6 months to 1.5 years to correct a phase 1, or 1.5 to 2.5 years to correct a phase 2. Okay, so that's a question that I've gotten many times. Now I'm going to stop the share so you can see this, because what I want to point out, my response to that question, which comes up often, that's why I love this poster, because it encompasses so much into one image. Historically, it would take 0 to 20 years to get to a phase 1. Now, what are we doing now more than we've ever done before as a society, as a generalization of our society? What are we doing now more of than we've ever done before? Well, there's actually two things. One, we're sitting more than we've ever done before. And two, we're spending more time in head flexion than we've ever done before. So those two things have accelerated the damage and the progress of a subluxation. Now, that's the first part, right? And if you jump back over, I'm going to show it to you again. Oops, I have to, there we go. Just share my screen again. Let me just show it to you again so you can really visualize this in this way. Here we go. There and here. So 0 to 20 years was how long it took to get to a phase 1. But now, because of our lifestyle, it's going much faster. Now, 6 months to 1.5 years was the time it took to correct a subluxation in a phase 1. And so and on and on. These timelines are there for your review. You can see these. But I want to jump back up to the screen, because if it takes 6 months to 1.5 years to correct a phase 1, what we've done in my office, and this is for you to share too, in our office, we've developed a very advanced technique where we utilize the most cutting edge research in the profession. And based on our techniques and how our patients respond to this customized approach, we've been able to shorten that 6 months to 1.5 years down to just 1 year. Or in the case of a phase 2, I think it was 2.5 to 3.5 years. We've been able to shorten that up to 3.5 year time frame down to just 12 months. See, so we're using this poster to put perspective on our recommendations and make it actually that we're building more value, right? So they're looking at this poster and they're thinking, well, wow, it was going to take 3.5 years, but yet this doctor's office can do it in 12 months. Well, fantastic. That's great. I like it, right? So we've seen longer time frames, shorter time frames in terms of how fast someone can progress through the degenerative phases, unfortunately, but we've also seen faster time frames in terms of how we can get a good response to care when a patient follows through with our recommendations. So that's how I really like that poster, and I utilize that. Now we're gonna, in the next section, oops, I didn't do my share. In the next section, I'm going to show you, that'll be next week, but I'll show you another piece to that, because and I'll come back to this in a second, but I want to just give this perspective for you on here. When we finish that timeline, and I should have shown you this on the last screen, but before we move past this, what we're going to do is we're going to ask the patient to choose their phase. Okay, so here, again, let me do it this way. Here's the poster. Here's what it means. Here's the progression. Here's how, we've sped up our results based on our study and research. Now, based on how I just described this poster, you have normal alignment, you have misalignment, you have mild degeneration, you have moderate degeneration, and you have fusion. Where would you say that you're at? And this is, again, one of those points when you pause and you let the patient actually choose their phase of subluxation degeneration. They're going to choose it on their own. And if it takes them a bit of time to answer that question, don't interject. Wait until they actually answer the question before providing the answer. And again, I'm smiling because I see that there's quite a few CAs on the call today. So get comfortable with this, right? This is where your training comes in. There was a famous quote by Michael Jordan, one of the greatest basketball players of all time. And he said, if you can't do it in practice, you'll never do it in the game. So make sure that you're practicing this with your team so that you can all get this dialed in and feel comfortable with going through the process that I'm showing you, right? Okay, so we're going to pause. Once they've identified their level of subluxation, then we can move on, but don't move on until they do. So and it may be, once again, that they picked the wrong phase. That's okay. Just help them. Say, well, I could see why you would say that. However, what I'm noticing is this finding here really points more in this area here. So like if they said, oh, I think I'm in a phase 3, but they were really in a phase 2, you might say, well, I can appreciate why you would say that, but the bone spurs that you have aren't spread over multiple levels. They're actually isolated to just one. So I would probably lean back towards this way. Or here's another example. Maybe they're right in between two phases, right? So there's some bone spurs there, but they're not quite as advanced as what we saw in the phase 2. Let me jump back over and I'll show it to you. So then in that case, once again, we don't want to be belittling about it. We want to help them to understand. So we're going to go back to this screen, and we're going to help them to understand it in a supportive way, right? So the supportive way would be, well, I could see why you would say phase 3 because you do have some bone spurs, but they're not spread over multiple levels. And here you can see it's just at one level. So really, I would say you're more in a phase 2, which is good news. Let's make sure we stop it before it ever gets past a phase 2. Or, as I started to show you, maybe there's a misalignment and there are some bone spurs forming, but they're not quite as advanced as what this is showing in a phase 2. So we could let them know you're not in a phase 1 because there is decay, but the decay that you have is not quite as advanced as this is. So I'd say you're probably like right in the middle of these two. But either way, let's put the brakes on it here and not let it grow to a phase 2. And we need to do that quickly. Those are just some ways you can adjust that in those ways and still use this. I really am a big fan of this poster. My team and I use this on every single report of findings, every single time. That's how great it is to have this. Okay, so let's continue on, because now once they've identified their level of subluxation degeneration, we're going to pause to summarize and empathize, and not emphasize, but empathize the primary concerns and health problems, the exam results, and the effects on the daily activities, which we haven't gotten into yet with the spouse, right? So we're once again, we're going to say, okay, now let me just pause for a minute, because when you came in, you shared with us that you had this lower back pain. Then we found that you've had allergies that have been lifelong, and you take XYZ medication for those. You also have had trouble with this lower back pain because you've been missing work. Now, the exam results showed not only do you have limited mobility and range of motion, but you also you're very stiff and you have a lot of pain all the time. And the exam results showed that's stemming from a subluxation, and that subluxation is in a phase 2 of degeneration, meaning that those bone spurs are literally starting to fuse the bones. Now, how's that affecting you? You've been taking Tylenol, you've been sleeping in on the weekends, you can't go out and play and do these things that you like to do, you stopped golfing, you've been unable to pick up your kids, you missed time from work, whatever it was that we found out on that first visit. Now we play it all back with the effects on the daily activities, which, as I started to say, this is the first time the spouse maybe has heard it all in one encapsulated list. And it may also be only the second time your new patient has heard it encapsulated in one big list, which once again starts to shift things towards, in their mind, I need to take care of this. This is a big priority. I don't want to continue to have my health affecting me in these ways. I want to get on with my life. I want to do normal activities, and I want to enjoy myself. And it's been way too long. So that's what we're building up towards through this process. And as you can see on the screen, it's about a 10-minute process. And that's it. We just go through reviewing those subluxations until they have a really clear understanding of how they're being affected by those subluxations. And we pause at the end of it to summarize and list off everything so that they really get a good idea, like, okay, wow, this is affecting me. I came in here just for lower back pain. I didn't realize all these other things were going on that could be connected to one single source. I need to take action. I need to move on this right away. And this is where we'll get into next week, which is the future health projections. Okay, so that is it in a nutshell for you. And we'll pick up where we left off in the next week. Now, quickly before we finish up, I know we're right up against the hour, but if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand. I'll be happy to answer your question. And other than that, if you do have questions, you can always reference the website, or you can email me at dctrainings@gmail.com. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. So aloha from Hawaii, and thank you all for being part of DC Trainings. If you have any questions, reach out and let me know. Otherwise, I will talk to you next week, and we'll take it from there. Thank you very much.
If you would like to become a member of DC Trainings, be sure to head on over to dctrainings.com to get started today.